When I talk about Ripple being like a second version of the Federal Reserve, that's the topic we're diving into inside the group. But let me be clear, I don't mean another corrupted central bank like the one we've had. I'm talking about a complete upgrade, a system that could move us out of the financial house of cards we've been trapped in for decades. I honestly believe Ripple could be the foundation of a new financial era, and those of us who've been paying attention. Over the past 10 years, we've been test driving it without even knowing. If we've been sharp enough to catch on, it's like we were silently present at the original Jekyll Island meeting where the Fed was born. Except this time, we get a chance at owning even a small piece of the system before it goes fully live. That's the core of what I'll break down inside the group. You can join through XRP.com, hit the join button on any of my YouTube videos, or subscribe through X. The full and extended versions of the video without ads are available. Through those options, now, let's talk about XRP. I've said it over and over. This is the asset that's going to dethrone Bitcoin. It's the real leader, and it's right in front of our faces. If you understand how regulation is shifting toward fairness, if you believe in real-world utility, if you recognize that Bitcoin can't handle tokenization of real estate, treasuries, or any real-world assets, then it becomes obvious. Bitcoin can't carry this financial evolution. It only gains liquidity by pulling in new buyers. XRP, on the other hand, does more than that. It will power tokenization. And if there's one thing I've learned since entering this space, it's this. Back in the day, if you wanted to buy any crypto, you had to go through Bitcoin. That's how it stacked up so much liquidity. This comes straight from the Wolf of all streets, and it's a pattern we've seen time and time again. When Bitcoin dominance starts dropping sharply, it's usually a sign that altcoins are absorbing that liquidity. Money doesn't leave. The market, it just moves around. And if you think that new investors entering the space won't eventually start asking, okay, I've heard of Bitcoin, CNBC won't stop talking about it, but what are all these other tokens? What do they actually do? Then you're underestimating the cycle. That exact curiosity is what pulled me in when I first entered the space. And it's about to repeat with the next wave of retail and institutional buyers. Right now, Bitcoin. Dominance is falling off a cliff. And that usually signals one thing. Alt season is loading. You can literally watch the drop happening. Bitcoin dominance was sitting at 61%. And now it's starting to nosedive. So I asked myself, where was Bitcoin dominance the last time XRP hit its all-time high? I went back to January 4th, 2018, and guess what? Bitcoin dominance was only at 38%. So think about that. XRP came close to its all-time high recently, even while Bitcoin still had a massive 61% share of the market. And now, with dominance starting to collapse, we could be setting the stage for something big. You don't need to be a genius to connect the dots here, like Smoke said. XRP only needs a 20x move from where it is right now to flip Bitcoin. And with Bitcoin dominance sliding and XRP gaining serious traction, that kind of move isn't out of the question. Remember back in November, we saw XRP 4x or 5x in no time? Now go back even further, before all the legal battles and the pressure started. Hitting Ripple and XRP in 2018, the price surged something like 60,000%. It blew past Ethereum and was charging straight toward Bitcoin's throne. And honestly, I think that's why it got shut down, because it was getting way too close to flipping the entire system. Meanwhile, things are heating up again as Crypto Week continues. Major legislation is on the move, with key votes expected. In the House, including the highly anticipated Genius Act. If it passes, it's headed straight to President Trump's desk. Word is, the signing ceremony is already scheduled for tomorrow at the White House, so hey, it might be a margarita night if it goes through. Over in the Senate, Senator Tim Scott is hosting a banking committee roundtable at 9 a.m. Industry leaders are attending, and yes, it looks like Charles Hoskinson will be in the room. And trust me, this is just the beginning. But let's be clear about one thing. It was never about Circle. It's always been Ripple. People forget Circle was backed by Goldman Sachs from the start. That alone should tell you everything. Like my father, the official father of this channel, told me years ago, and like I told all of you 7 years back, Nothing happens in finance unless Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan are involved. Just look into EITH Gate. JP Morgan's fingerprints are all over it. Goldman Sachs was in the shadows too. Don't forget Charles Hoskinson even admitted on camera that they had Goldman Sachs developers in the mix. And Joseph Lubin?
Straight.
From Goldman himself, if you really believe these giants weren't deeply tied into Bitcoin and Ethereum from day one, you're missing the bigger picture. That's exactly why Ripple's been under non-stop fire, because they're not in the club. But that fight, it ends now. As of today, things are starting to flip. The Ripple case could finally wrap up. And what do we see on CNBC? Andrew Ross Sorkin doing what he always does, repeating whatever narrative he's handed from the top. He's hyping up Circle as the next big thing. But here's the truth. Circle isn't the powerhouse. Ripple is. Circle has to split profits from its stablecoin business with Coinbase, from what I understand. Ripple, they don't have to do that, and they're sitting on billions in XRP reserves. So ask yourself, why does the media keep pushing Circle? Because the narrative has to be controlled until the very last second. Mark my words, once the legislation drops and the Ripple case is closed, these same people will be falling all over themselves trying to act like they always supported XRP. The switch is coming. Watch what happens. Watch closely. Right now in the US, there's still no clear nationwide rulebook for crypto or stablecoins, unless you count what New York's been doing through DFS over the past few years. That's why it's absolutely critical we establish a federal framework to oversee this tech, especially when it ties into maintaining the US dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency. Getting this structure in place will be a win for innovation and for market stability. But let's get specific, because people keep throwing around terms like Genius Act without really understanding what it even covers. Take tokenization. For example, there's been a lot of buzz lately about turning private company shares into tokens. But this bill doesn't actually say whether that's legal or not. And that's the key. We have to separate different parts of this space: crypto assets, tokenized real-world assets, and stablecoins, which is what the Genius Act is focused on. What it does is take what New York implemented years ago and starts turning those guidelines into national policy. That includes things like one-on-one backing, meaning for every stablecoin issued, there needs to be $1 or its equivalent held in reserve. That way, consumers know their coins are fully backed and redeemable within a reasonable time frame. So yes, the legislation talk is heating up, but we need to be clear on what's actually being addressed. This vote is happening today, folks. Normally, when it comes to crypto-related legislation, we're used to seeing Democrats put up roadblocks, especially when Republicans are the ones pushing the bills. But this time, it's different. In fact, one of the Democratic representatives, along with a few of their colleagues, actually sent a letter urging fellow members to support the bill. Why? Because they recognize what's at stake. And they know there's a massive and growing voting bloc of pro-crypto Americans. Now let's be real, the bill isn't perfect. But the alternative, making no progress at all, and that would be a bigger mistake, as one rep said. We've been working on some version of these bills for years, trying to bring real clarity and consumer protection to the crypto space. And now we've got two solid pieces of legislation with bipartisan support, and it's time to get them passed. This isn't just about innovation. It's about cleaning up the scams, protecting consumers, and keeping America at the forefront of financial technology. So what are these two bills? The Genius Act, which defines stablecoins mandates, one-to-one backing with US dollars or cash equivalents, and helps ensure that the dollar remains the dominant global currency. This one's expected to see broad bipartisan support. The Clarity Act, which finally lays out the regulatory structure, clarifying the roles of the SEC and CFTC, and ending the confusion over who's supposed to oversee what. And yes, this one's even pulling in some Democrats who've traditionally been skeptical. Of course, there are still some who try to spin everything back to politics, to Trump, to partisanship. But the bottom line is this: do we want to protect consumers or not? That's the question. And judging by the momentum behind these votes, it looks like we're finally about to get some answers. And at least the smart ones are finally waking up to what's happening. Here's Congressman Tom Emmer, breaking it down. There are three key bills on the floor today. First up, the Genius Act, a dollar-backed stablecoin bill that originated in the Senate. This one isn't just about the U.S. It's about exporting the U.S. dollar worldwide. Maybe the impact won't be massive domestically at first, but long-term, it could even replace the petrodollar system. And think about it. A cab driver in Brazil who wants to operate in U.S. dollars but currently can't. This would change that. A dollar-backed stablecoin would give global access to the greenback, reinforcing the dollar's position as the world's reserve currency. The second bill is the Clarity Act, which finally tackles the biggest issue scaring investors away: regulatory confusion.
Right.
Now businesses don't even know who they're supposed to report to. Is it the Treasury, the SEC, the CFTC? No one wants to burn through legal fees just figuring that out. This bill sets the boundaries clearly and finally creates a market structure that invites growth instead of choking it out. And then there's Mur's own bill, one he's been pushing for 5 or 6 years, which aims to ban the creation of a central bank digital currency, CBDC. Why is that important? Because unlike the US, countries like China use their CBDC as a surveillance tool, tracking purchases, habits, and building social scores. That's completely un-American. The goal is to prevent the federal government from ever having the power to spy on your finances in real time. And let's be honest, the previous crew in Washington, before Trump, didn't care. But now, the tide is turning. These bills are expected to pass today, and I can't wait to see how the markets react. Now here's the new SEC chair. Chiming in, he gets it, says it straight. Digital payment innovation should stay in the private sector. The government issues the dollar, sure, but how it moves around, that should be left to banks, institutions, and the innovators. We're not China. We don't need a government-controlled payment system. Let the free market lead. Meanwhile, Trump's also moving. Word is he's drafting a letter to remove Jerome Powell. Big moves all around. And let's not forget what Smoke said: the Genius Act will accelerate XRP's integration into U.S. markets. That's huge. It paves the way for institutional money to start flowing in, and that alone could support XRP's price. There's even speculation this is tied directly to the ongoing lawsuit that a potential settlement, combined with the stablecoin regulatory framework, could fast-track XRP's reintegration into the U.S. system. And if you followed the mess revealed during ETHgate, all that regulatory capture and backdoor deals, then you understand why this moment is so important. This has always been about Federal Reserve 2.0, and XRP is at the heart of that shift. That's why, personally, I'm holding on to my XRP long-term, maybe even forever. But hey, I'm not a financial advisor. It's just what I'm doing. This is for entertainment purposes only. If you want more, head to diexrp.com. That's the Patreon group. Or hit the join button below any of my YouTube videos, or subscribe through X. We're covering this and so much more in the group. Smash that like button, share this with your friends and family, and hit subscribe because we are just getting started. Let's go.